Ari joins us on Tuesdays, most every Tuesday here on 365 Sports. Hello. Good to see you. We're getting down close to where mathematics, physics, whatever the law of whatever the earth is, we're going to have two teams, maybe even this weekend, that we know will be a part of the Big 12 championship game. In your opinion, what has been the biggest surprise to date in the conference of one team? Good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of them. K-State fighting for bowl eligibility here and not fighting for the top of the conference is a huge surprise. I think given where most people thought that they would be, I think Baylor, regardless of if you thought they're going to win the conference or not, finishing the way that they did last year with the offense that returned, that's a huge surprise. BYU with a true freshman quarterback doing what they're doing. I mean, Bear Bachmeier has been phenomenal. He's averaging, I think, 218 yards passing a game and at least 50 yards rushing in each game he's played. It's just a remarkable number. So they have, to have BYU where they are is probably a surprise. And then, I mean, maybe we shouldn't be surprised by Texas Tech, but, certainly a question coming into the year if Tech was going to be the alpha, Tech was going to be as good as we thought they would be based on their talent and personnel. And, they probably have been even better than we thought they would be this year.
TCU in this last week, the heat has turned up a little bit more than it was. Now, I don't think Sonny Dykes is on the hot seat in the same way that, say, Dave Aranda is, but he is certainly in the same spot that maybe Aranda was a year ago, I would think, because his fans are, they're mad about the way that the offense can't run the ball. They're mad about the defense can't really stop anybody. They got absolutely manhandled like they weren't there by BYU last week. What do you think Sonny Dykes needs to really address or change to turn down that temperature so that he's not sitting here next year like Dave Aranda is this year?
It's funny, Paul, but I mean, if you boil last season for TCU down to two issues, it would be running the ball on defense. I mean, they had atrocious luck try to run the football last year, and they thought they had fixed the issue, and Kavorian Barnes just hasn't figured out a way to stay healthy, and because of that, they've kind of been the same offense that they were last year. And then defensively, man, they started off the season with a bang, and it's sort of devolved into what we've seen. That's also a huge surprise. I mean, TCU not being better. And, it's funny because they've now lost a couple of straight games and like they should have won the Iowa State game. They had that game completely in hand and they could not take advantage of an Iowa State defense that most teams have been able to take advantage of lately. So, I look at the mistakes made in that game. It's been turnovers. Josh Hoover has not been good. I trace back Hoover to that Arizona State game. With all due respect to Tim Brando, I'll never get out of my mind that he kept talking throughout the game about how underrated Josh Hoover is. And it's almost as if they pumped the audio into Sam Levitt's helmet because he turned it on in the fourth quarter and he completely outdueled Hoover. And Hoover has not been the same since. He had two more turnovers in this game. He's had multiple two interception games, dating back to that Arizona State game. So, I think it's a great question, Paul, but it's sort of funny that a year later it's same issues here that are plaguing TCU. And, coming into the year, I thought one of the big pieces on TCU was, the fact that TCU had from a talent standpoint had recruited at the top of the conference. And so you thought that based on their heavy recruiting, the 4 and 5 stars that they had over the last 3-4 years would start to really, make hay. And for whatever reason, again, they just have not been able to run the football. Their offensive line continues to have issues. They thought they fixed this thing in the offseason and yet their defense is bad again. So, look, Dykes obviously built up a lot of cachet with his success year one, but I think it's hard to believe that next year he doesn't start the season on the hot seat, given, this team has just not gotten close to the level they got to in year one under Sonny.
So I put an asterisk by the name Sam Levitt because we need to circle back to that at some point, given today's news. But BYU just crushed TCU. And they've done that to a lot of teams this year. Is there any part of you that feels like there's a scenario where it's not BYU, Texas Tech with 2 weeks to play in Arlington?
If there is, it's Texas Tech and Utah. But And if I'm being honest, I think that's the game I want to see more than Texas Tech BYU. And I don't know why, beyond the fact that it feels like Utah is considerably better than when they played Texas Tech the first time. Now that means I think Texas Tech's also probably better than when they played the first time. But yeah, I mean, with what BYU has left, it's hard to think from what we saw from Cincinnati last week that they could pose much difficulty, but it is a road game. And yeah, I would think that BYU with a win here basically clinches the opportunity to play Texas Tech for a Big 12 championship. The miraculous thing, Craig, would be how sort of clean that would be for a league that's been anything but. I mean, pretty much every year since the Big 12 championship came back, the Big 12 has had at least one team with 2 losses play in the Big 12 championship game. And so with that, we've had a crazy amount of tiebreakers that we've had to sort through. And so at this point, it seems pretty cut and dried. And again, if it is Tech and BYU with that one loss in conference play that meet up, I mean, that would be the cleanest Big 12 championship matchup we've ever seen, and certainly within recent history. But, it's the one thing, guys, we've been talking about all year. We talked about it in the offseason. Is the Big 12 going to be more top heavy, or is it going to be a league of parity? And the ACC is clearly a league of parity this year. I think the Big 12 is more top heavy than it's been in a long time. I think we're seeing that, like the separation between Tech and BYU and Tech and Utah, and then the separation between Utah and Cincinnati and Utah and Houston and, and BYU. Like it's wild just to see the outcomes of these games, to see the clear delineation between, tier 1, tier 2, and then the drop off to me between tier 1, tier 2, and then the rest of the conference in tier 3, tier 4, and beyond that. I mean, it's clear Texas Tech's tier 1. It's clear BYU and Utah are clear or tier 2, and then maybe Cincinnati, Houston, Arizona, tier 3. Clearly a significant step below the rung there with tier 1 and tier 2. So, I think that's good for the conference. I think puts the conference in position to get two teams into the playoff. And, I believe the Big 12 tied a record last year with 9 bowl eligible teams. Well, there are 3 more that are on the cusp of bowl eligibility, including K-State, Kansas, and Baylor. So, I would imagine at least one of those 3 gets to bowl eligibility, which would mean 10 bowl teams. So again, just speaks to the strength of the conference in 2025.
Yeah, and I just want to, this isn't a question, I just want to say this for any random Cincinnati fan, not being disrespectful to the Bearcats. They have a shot to win at home. It's just that it's more about respect for BYU and what I've seen, that I anticipate that they're probably going to win that game and we're going to see BYU Tech. But yeah, I think Tech and Utah round 2 would be very interesting. Parity, they picked the wrong year to not have parity, because now it's all in style. Because in the SEC, it's like parity galore, and now it's like the depth of your league is so impressive. We were talking about that earlier, whereas when it was the other way, it's like, oh, they don't have any great teams. So yeah, I think maybe they have a couple of great teams. I think Arizona State with a healthy Levitt would have been in that mix potentially as well, that top tier, but obviously that didn't play out that way.
Yeah, and I mean, it's remarkable what Arizona State has done despite that. I mean, I asked Kenny Dillingham this last week, and basically, like, how many wins would you have said you'd have if you knew before the season started that you'd play the majority of the year without Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson, and then, their leader in the back end of the defense and Xavier Alford? I mean, it's incredible that they are as good as they are, given the losses that they've sustained. I think most teams would be closer to probably 3 or 4 wins, given what they've dealt with this year. So, it speaks to the program, it speaks to the culture, it speaks to how good of a coach Kenny Dillingham is. And it's been a remarkable season for them, given all of the issues that they've had, to still be bowl eligible, to still be competing. I mean, they're the only team to knock a win against Texas Tech. It's pretty remarkable what they've done. And yeah, I mean, look, I think, when the SEC does it, it's depth top to bottom, and the Big 12 does it, it's parity. And I don't know if the Big 12 the last few years has been closer to resembling that of the SEC this year or that of the ACC, but maybe it's easier from this vantage point to see just how bad the ACC is top to bottom. And maybe that's why people have looked at the Big 12 that way. I don't know. It feels like the Big 12 has been better, but maybe that's just because we're so deep into it. But the ACC is trash. It's awful. And it just shows week to week, how a league of parity can be viewed like that. And, I don't know that we've ever seen a situation of the Big 12 where the best team was buried in the standings in Miami and wouldn't have a shot to play in the playoff. Most years, I think getting an automatic bid from conference champions makes sense. This year, it's not going to make a ton of sense at all. I mean, we've already seen group of 5 teams that get the designation of being, CFP, the CFP bid, that they've lost and gone down. It certainly seems like, none of those teams are worthy of a bid this year, but they'll get one. And then the ACC, I mean, if the ACC is going to get a bid, it probably shouldn't be from their champion. It should probably be from Miami, who has the best resume of any of these ACC teams.
So Levitt, the story today that perhaps he's not certain to come back to Arizona State. Not a surprise, but it was disappointing, I think. And Dillingham fights that every day. He wants to come back. He has said he's coming back. 2 things. Were you surprised when you saw Levitt might be getting shopped around? And 2, what does that really mean to college football? And can it affect what Dillingham and where he is next year?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, no, I'm not surprised. There is a ton of smoke right now around Arizona State. And, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's a lot of smoke. And, number one, so you look at the Levitt part of it. And so Levitt at a minimum is trying to gauge fair market value for his services. So, maybe he is really shopping around, or maybe he's gauging what the market bears and then trying to bring that back to Arizona State and say, can you get close? When we spoke with Kenny Dillingham, one of the things that he mentioned was, he's fully committed to Arizona State, but that he needs them to give some concessions in terms of money. That's the reality of the situation. And I'm, good on Dillingham for not beating around the bush. And so, you sort of start to wonder, as much as it seems like Dillingham's not going to go anywhere, and all indications are that he's not, and he's, certainly said all the right things. But I mean, the reality is, and Dillingham told us this, every coach wants to be in position to win a national championship. Well, if Arizona State can't raise the type of money they need in order to win a national championship, to procure the players that they need, what does that say to the head coach? And does he now look at coaching elsewhere? And, I mean, the huge conspiracy theory here would be, yeah, it's both Dillingham and Sam Levitt going to LSU. And look, I mean, in 2025, like, that's not the most surprising thing out there, as surprising as that might seem. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm simply saying, Dillingham, like most coaches, just wants to be in a spot where he knows that he can win a national championship, compete there. He's felt like that since he's been at Arizona State. But the difference is, does Arizona State have the dollars to match what's out there in order for them in the future to be able to get that? Because Dillingham's not going to disparage any of his players trying to maximize their value in a world in which value is trying to be maximized. So, yeah, a lot of smoke around this. I certainly saw the reaction from Levitt's camp and his brother, and they're calling BS on the NACOS report. But look, I mean, there's clearly a lot of people talking, and this report isn't. Most times that people say, "Oh, this is a BS report," that they're found to be untrue, and especially when it comes from somebody like a Pete NACOS, who's got and Steve Wiltfong for that matter. Normally when there's reports that are out there that are wrong and prove to be wrong, they're from guys that you've never heard of, that are maybe smaller newspapers or whatever, that are just trying to make a name for themselves. But the guys like Schefter and NACOS and, Thamel, yeah, like they don't miss. So there's clearly smoke going on there. Does this mean he's going to leave? No. But I think the bigger story here is, can Arizona State then keep Dillingham if Dillingham recognizes that they don't have the true NIL ability to keep as many players they need to keep around?
You know what I think the problem for Arizona State is? Because I think that if you really, for such a big school that had so many alum that have been successful and all that, they just haven't cared about athletics for so long. So it's not like they couldn't probably go find the money in the same regard as a similar sized school could find the money if they had given a damn about it for a quarter century. But going to people that you've never asked for money for football or basketball or anything before, and then all of a sudden asking them it's a hard thing to do. And it's a hard thing to ask an athletic director who's been on the job for less than a year to do that as well, even though that's what they're going to do. But I think that's probably more of the problem, is that, okay, well, they could probably find it, but it might take them 3 or 4 years to really get that going. Or I could go to LSU, who, I mean, they're always got their hand out and always have for football. I could do the same for Florida or whatever job opens up. And I know that at least they have the infrastructure of asking. As we're here, this school didn't care about it for 25 years.
No, it's a great point. And, look, I mean, over that past, quarter century, as you referenced, like they've had some success, but nothing that's sustained. I would think now would be the best possible time to go and meet with those people to try to, to open the pocketbooks, because this is a different dude. It's a different time, and they're looking for sustainable excellence. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly a part of it. Like if you're trying to bark up a tree of someone that you've, never gotten to open the pocketbook, why now? I mean, I would think because right now seems to be the best opportunity that they have to have long-term sustained success at a place that they just haven't had it. And I mean, you're right. I mean, Jaden Daniels was at Arizona State and he left and went to LSU and won a Heisman Trophy and became the second overall pick. So like talent hasn't been the issue. It's been getting guys to stay, getting guys to buy in. And you'd think now that they have the coach that they'd be willing to do that. But, it really is a haves versus have-nots world right now. And, a player like Levitt is going to command high dollar because he is a Heisman Trophy type guy who has the upside to be a high first-round pick. He just hasn't stayed healthy this year, and that's a reason that he's kind of fallen by the wayside. So, I mean, best case scenario, this is all just a bunch of smoke that evaporates. But, again, it's hard to think that there's not anything here. There's not legs here.
Ari, last question. We have had our conversations and we've played some of the Dave Aranda responses to questions from after the game Saturday and even Monday morning. And I know he gets it, but then again, he doesn't really get it. And then, of course, they are struggling. What are your thoughts about where he is and Baylor is? And can there's in your opinion, we have ours, but in your opinion, can they move on into the future with him?
No, and I don't think they will. I said that last week too, regardless of what the outcome of the Utah game was, but the Utah outcome just kind of validated the entire season, right? We thought maybe the UCF game, sort of a sign of something they'd figured out. And then what do? They gave up 55 points or whatever it was. I think they've given up the 7 highest point totals to 7 opponents they played this year. Mm-hmm. And then another couple, it's been the second highest point totals they've had on the year.
Is that bad?
Just no way. Like there's a level of apathy, I think, that's set in. Like I know I have a ton of friends in the Dallas area that are Baylor alums. Like they're completely apathetic towards this program right now. I can't imagine that that's, not the norm for a lot of Baylor fans right now. And that's like apathy is the last place you could possibly be, especially in an era where, like we just talked about, you need fan interest and you need booster interest. And like you could sell momentum last year. You can't sell momentum right now.
No,
you had all these wins going into the end of the season. You thought, okay, it was a slow start, but they figured something out. They return everybody from that offensive line. They bring back everybody on offense. They add new players on offense. This should be one of the most explosive offenses in college football. Guys, there's a reason I picked Baylor to win the Big 12. I thought the defense with Aranda, a year to fix it. Like it's clear that Aranda is in over his head as being a head coach. I just don't know that he could be any more clear at this point in time. I think Matt Rule left a roster intact that was ready to win at a high level, and Aranda babysat that team. And now, the further removed we are from that Big 12 championship team, the more we recognize that Aranda is probably better suited to be a defensive coordinator. And it's just evident in the way that he talks. It's evident in the way that he prepares. It's evident in the things that he says. Like he doesn't get the big picture. And I think, Smokey, you've just mentioned that. Like you can't be in the minutia in the way that Aranda seems to constantly be in the minutia. That's for coordinators to be. And he's just never really shed that. I think, he's probably been too quick to fire assistant coaches. I think we can go down a laundry list of things for why it hasn't worked out for Aranda at Baylor. I think he's a super nice guy and he's a deep thinker and he's really interesting to have a beer with. But other than that, I think it's clear that he's not the guy. I mean, the biggest thing now is who's making the call. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the timing on this Mack Rhoades thing could not have come at a worse time because you've got a very short window here to try to hire a new coach. And there's plenty of big time coaches out there I would hire tomorrow. Jeff Traylor at UTSA, GJ Kitty at Texas State, Eric Morris at North Texas, Colin Klein at Texas A&M. There's 4 that I would be, foaming at the mouth to hire tomorrow to be my head coach. So, the question on this is timing. When's the right time? And do you have, is it the interim athletic director? Do you even have one at this point? He's taking a leave of absence? Like the verbiage here is really, really disconcerting from a Baylor perspective.
Thank you, buddy. Good to see you. As always, Ari Temkin with James Westland in the morning, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn